بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلي وسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. Muslim's Guide to Naturalism, Evolution and Atheism. The evolution triangle. As a term, evolution is general, vague, and is impregnated with numerous meanings, some of which are agreed upon, conforming with the empirical observations, and some of which are contested. Conveniently, the term evolution is defined and expressed in a manner similar to that of horoscopes. It's extremely broad, non-specific, and all explanatory, such that it is easy to interpret experimental data to confirm predictions, just like in video experience confirm horoscopes cast in very general and vague terms. Then such is the experimental data in relation to broad and vague definition of evolution, such as change over time, modification by descent, common descent, gradual development of something into a more complex form, and an increase in the frequency of alleles within a population. These are not formal scientific hypotheses because they lack the necessary specificity and are catch-all explanation in the framework of which any observation can be fitted. This is how evolutionists convince the lay public of their religious beliefs. It is through the deception of language and clever terms and definitions. It is useful to look at evolution from the evolutionist point of view as a triangle with 3 points. Two of its points are observable fact. The third is a conjectural philosophical belief system which incorporates belief in miracles, and it is theoretically assumed and extrapolated from the other two and presented in a complicated cryptic manner and mixed with ingenious storytelling and perpetrated evidence in the form of bluster, smoke, and mirrors to make it sound as if it has been validated by the standard of scientific research, empirism, logic, and testability, when the tack reality is otherwise. It's revealing the statement of Ernest Mayr, one of the pioneers of the modern synthesis, who said in 1963 the proponents of the synthetic theory maintain that all evolution is due to accumulation of small genetic changes, mutations, guided by natural selection, and the trans-specific evolution and microevolution is nothing but an extra pollution and magnification of the event that take place in the populations and the species. Microevolution. This exploitation and magnification has no scientific empirical basis and is but an article of pure faith. Let's look at the 3 points of our triangle. The first point of the triangle, there is a variation, the changes we see within an organism. The term microevolution is commonly used here. A variation is a fact because it is observable. There is a variation between father and son, brother and sister, great-grandparent and great-grandchildren. The capacity of variation is inbuilt. All organisms have an inbuilt capacity to manifest slight variation in traits and to adapt to habit, environment, and circumstances, but only within defined limits that cannot be transgressed. This can be likened to a dot to the organism, and around it a circle with the limit of variation. Adaptability. We can draw lines from the center dot and extend them away from the dot in any direction. These lines may reach the surrounding circle line, the limit of variation in a particular trait or feature, or it may not. This is an analogy for all possible potential variation within an organism, built upon its genetic record base and its environment. The first meaning that is included within the term evolution is outside the field of contention. A more accurate term for this world be pre-engineered in built capacity for variable adaptation. It is important to note that there can be physical similar organisms which can loosely call species, which are able to produce fertile viable offspring with other species, interbreeding, leading to hybrids and variations, an example being wolves and dogs. This by design. It is intended by variation in the creation through compatible genetic bases, allowing for variation and diversity. This is also outside the field of contention. Thus, we have accommodated novelty within a type due to adaptation to environment and novelty between types through reproduction. However, such novelty and variation is always within the limit that can never be transgressed as known empirically. The second point of the triangle homology, this means that there are similarities in appearance, physiology, biochemistry, and the underlying genetic code in the organism. This is the fact because it is observable and is also outside of the field where contention. The first 2 points of the triangle represent a change within a boundaries with kinds and be observable greater difference between kinds that reveal underlying similarities. At this point, we should note that the data for those who argue for creator and those who argue for inanimate nature as a creative force is the same. The point of contention is regarding interpretation, how the above mentioned observations and realities should be accounted for. The real question is it more believable and reasonable that what appears to be extended and purposeful and what cannot be spoken by materialists and others except with the language of identical thinking and theology should be ascribed to choice with intent attribute of knowledge, willpower, and wisdom, or to purely physico-chemical random interactions to chance and the necessity alone to ignorance, blindness, and purposelessness. This is the real argument all along. And as such, the naturalists and others simply employ clever semantic device to conceal the ascription of divine qualities, knowledge, will, wisdom, pursuit of goals to nature and to cause and to cause effect mechanism. This is the true and real secret of naturalists and others. If you grab this reality, you will have become wise to their scam and how they are able to deceive the world with their fairy tale stories. Disguised as a science through extremely creative, ambiguous terminology, you will also in a much better position to counter their primitive conjectural beliefs. That point of the triangle, the creative force, the deity, the ignorant purposelessness, blind watchmaker, which produces large-scale changes, or what is referred to as micro-elevation. We will call this RAM-NS for short random mutation being acted upon by natural selection. This is the new Darwin deity of the modern scientist. Ainam. Belief and blind faith in this deity is assumed and extrapolated from the previous 2 points, with speculative inference and often by clever storytelling. It's not based upon the standard of scientific knowledge, which are empiricism, logic, and testability. However, it is deceptively made to appear as such through fallacious arguments which violate the logic of scientific inquiry, affirming the concept and begging the question. B. Baseless inference. C. Redefining evolution to omit its central doctrines RMNS so as to enable successful prediction text for more broadly settled general catch-all concepts such as descent with modification and common ancestry, and this from the greatest of the techniques used by the faithful believers. D. A strawman argument. E. Making suggested generations from data. F. Deliberate evidence, and G. Confusing macro elevation with a micro elevation so as to increase the confusing micro elevation with a macro evolution, micro evolution, the first one also, so as to increase the amount of apparent evidence establishing the deity and its lofty attribute. This is often done by referring to microevolution by using the general term of elevation, while it's allowing the listener to assume that you are speaking of macroevolution. This can be accepted. Evolution is an undeniable fact, or the evolution has taken place is an undeniable fact, and so on. Most evolutionists claim that the small-scale changes within a type, a microevolution, can account for large-scale changes, a precision or microevolution over geological timescales. They speak as if this is factually proven when it is actually subject to ongoing controversy amongst the evolutionists themselves, because empirical evidence for this claim does not exist, not a shred of it. The claim is derived through theoretical explanation, not empirical evidence, and is simply assumed to have happened. After all available data is interpreted as the assumed fact in a manner that conforms with this conjectural belief. This is what the research says on macroevolution. 1. Andrew Simon's right emphasis added a persistent debate in evolutionary biology, one over the continuity of evolution and macroevolution, whether microevolutionary trends are governed by the principles of microevolution. David Resnick Wright's emphasis added that we anticipated and that microevolution will be a process of continuous and gradual change. The term microevolution, by contrast, refers to the origin of new species and division of the taxonomic hierarchy above the species level, and also to the origin of complex adaptations, such as the vertebrate. Microevolution poses a problem to Darwin because its principle of descent with modification predicts gradual protonation between small-scale adaptive changes in population and the larger-scale phenomenon. Yet there is little evidence for such a transition in nature. Instead, the natural world is often characterized by gaps or discontinuities. One type of gap relates to the existence of organs of extreme perfection, such as the eye, or morphological innovations such as wings, both of which are found fully formed in present day organisms without living evidence of how they evolved. Ainam. To David Stern writes, one of the oldest problems in evolutionary biology remains largely unsolved. Historically, the new Darwin synthesizers stressed the preeminence of micro-mutations in evolution, whereas others noted the similarities between some dramatic mutation and evolutionary transition to argue for micro-mutationism. The rewriting about a new extended synthesis to evolution, Robert Carroll stated large-scale evolutionary phenomena cannot be understood solely on the basis of extrapolation from processes observed at the level of modern populations and species, meaning small-scale changes observed within populations and species cannot explain through extrapolation large-scale evolutionary changes. For Roger Lewin writes in the Science Journal, a wide spectrum of researchers ranging Allahumma stan. Roger Lewin writes in the Science Journal, a wide spectrum of researchers, ranging from geologists and paleontologists through ecologists and population genetics to embryologists and molecular biologists, gathered at Chicago's Field Museum of Natural History under the simple conference titled Microevolution. Their task was to consider the mechanisms that underlie the origin of species and the evolutionary relationship between species. The central question of the Chicago Conference was whether the mechanism underlying microevolution can be extrapolated to explain the phenomena of microevolution. At the risk of doing violence at the positions of some of the people at the meeting, the answer can be given as a clear no. 5. In his paper titled Microevolution is More Than Repeated Rounds of Microevolution, Douglas Edwin discusses microevolution, speciation, and novelty, and includes the link between microevolution and microevolution in his continuous text. His text, I know. But discontinuities have been documented at a variety of scales, from the punctuated nature of much speciation to patterns of cumulative over time, the sorting of species within clades by differentiation, speciation, and extinction, and finally mass extinction. These discontinuities impart a hierarchical structure to evolution, a structure which impairs, obstructs, and even neutralizes the effect of microevolution. 6. In their paper for Nature magazine, Darwin's bridge between the microevolution and microevolution, Resnick and Recluse write, microevolution poses a problem to Darwin because its principle of descent with the modification predicts gradual transition between small-scale adaptive changes in the populations and these large-scale phenomena. Yet there is little evidence for such transition in nature. Instead, the natural world is often characterized by gaps or discontinuities. One type of gap related to the existence of organs of extreme perfection, such as the eye, or morphological innovations, as wings, both of which are found fully formed in present-day organisms without leaving evidence of a transition between them. These continuities plus the discontinuous appearance and disappearance of taxa in the fossil record from the modern conceptual divide between microevolution and microevolution. Most evolutionary biologists think that Darwin explained microevolution simply as microevolution, macroevolution as simply as microevolution. Right large. In fact, Darwin had rather more to say about the relationship between microevolution and microevolution and invoked additional principles to define it. And the current of the debate about the mechanism of microevolution in whether natural selection and microevolution is also a cause of microevolution. Darwin's proposal carries a more general message for a contemporary discussion of microevolution, namely that microevolution alone cannot explain macroevolution. 7. In another Nature magazine article titled "The Big Picture," Sean Carroll writes, evolutionary change occurs on different scale. Microevolution in general is generally equated with events at or below the species level, whereas macroevolution is change above the species level, including the formation of species. A long-standing issue of evolutionary biology is whether the process observable in extent, population and species microevolution are sufficient to account for the larger scale changes evident over the longer periods of life history. Microevolution. Outsiders to this rich literature may be surprised that there is no consensus on this issue, and that strong viewpoints are held at both ends of the spectrum, with many undecided. Traditionally, evolutionary geneticists have asserted that macroevolution is the product of microevolution, right large, whereas some paleontologists have advocated the view that the process of perverting above the level of microevolution also shape evolutionary trends. One of the evolutionary phenomena for which the mechanism and discontinuity between macroevolution and microevolution has most often been asserted in the best of innovation and in the diversification, associated with major radiations of forms, for example, the dramatic phyletic and morphological evolution, seen the explosive Cambrian radiation of animal phyla. 8. The reality is posed in some words cited from the Diodiasias, Dobzhansky, a central figure in the development of the modern synthesis of Darwinian evolution which dominated the 20th century. In his paper Microevolution, the Morphological Problem, K. Thompson writes, the basic critical faith of graduate approach is that the major morphological evolutions can be produced without some sort of saltation, but the dilemma of the neo-Darwinian synthesis is that no one has the satisfactorily demonstrated a mechanism at the population genetic level by which innumerable very small phenotypic changes could accumulate rapidly to produce large changes, a process for origin of the magnificently inaccurate from the ineffably trivial. This leads to skepticism about the microevolution approach. In looking back over the literature over the last 60 years, it is fascinating that throughout the whole ground development of the new synthetic theory, the macroevolutionary question remains in a constant undercurrent. In one of the most influential books of the new synthetic approach, as it is evolved in Britain and the United States, Dobzhansky, Dobzhansky in 1987 was quite circumspect about the mechanism of microevolution, which required time on geological scale. However, we are compelled at the present level of knowledge recently to put a sign of equality between the mechanism of macro and microevolution, and proceeding on this assumption to push our investigation as far ahead as the working hypothesis will permit. This statement from Dobzhansky reveals the secret regarding the argument for evolution and the true scientific status of the claim that microevolution is the same as microevolution but on longer timescales. This is mere assumption and conjecture, accepted as fact through the use of sign of equality. An equal sign in reality it is a basic article of faith, and is but a theoretical extrapolation from empirical observation motivated by religious materialism. These citations come from evolutionists who are honest about the current scientific status of the claim that macroevolution and macroevolution and microevolution are essentially the same process. Knowing that no empirical evidence exists, they are nevertheless capable of having faith that this problem will be solved in the future. This also proves what was mentioned at the beginning of the book, that the scientific literature about the scientific status of certain evolutionary claims is often in stark contrast to what is claimed within textbook and popular sciences writings, and the brainwashing that take place in educational institutions, especially in lower age groups. In short, there is zero empirical evidence for macroevolution being microevolution on larger time scale. This is an imagined concocted religious belief. It is assumed so as to give emotional belief and comfort from symptoms of cosmic authority syndrome, which is to resent that they should be an authority over the universe at all. Everything that evolutionists used to argue for their religion are a small-scale observation of variations, population of a limited number of generations. These variations are inbuilt by design. The DNA, gene, cell, the genetic system has inbuilt variety and adaptability. The first variety allows changes in appearance, a form, fitness, and so on between the parent and child on account of the code base itself. the 23 chromosome from each parent. In the second adaptability, the skillfully designed cybernetic system changes the code base at various nodes, swift switching code on and off in response to the environment, allowing the child to adapt to the challenges. As a result, no two organisms within a species will be identical in every respect. When we look within a family, we see general similarities in appearance as well as large variations. All of this is inbuilt by design. The underlying molecular, biochemical, computation process behind all of these are studied by evolutionists and used as evidence neurologically fallacious reasoning for their conjectural affirmative belief system in which nature possesses divine attributes and is the creator and lord of the worlds. In short, evolution is a religion with a deity. This deity has attributes and it is the masterful creator, but is totally blind, ignorant, and directionless, despite the fact that intentionally and intentionality and wisdom abound in what it has created. The reality is that these evolutionary tool annoying, willing, creating force behind life are nothing but polytheists and nature worshippers who extract divine qualities to nature and then pretend otherwise through divine, through clever, technical knowledge, knowing that they will be laughed at, even by children if they tested their claims in plain, simple language and drew analogies, but that common people can understand. It was only in the 20th century that it was possible to do pull of such trickery and to deceive otherwise intelligent people, because these people were too smart to believe such nonsense, because the technical means to camouflage and hide such ridiculous baseless assertion simply did not exist. This is by Abu Iyad now. May Allah, I don't know if he died. If he died, may Allah have mercy on him, and if he's alive, may Allah